It is 7 o'clock, and this is the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for June 9th, 2011. We will start by rising for a moment of silent prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which is going to be led tonight by some of our Boy Scouts. I assume you're here for a merit badge, right? Well, we'll try to give you some education while you're here. We have maybe a short agenda, so you might have to come back for a second time. Next item is approval of the agenda. We do have a rather short agenda. Does anybody have any changes you need to make?
Approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Note that Alderman Markley did not vote. Next item is the mayor's report. All I have to say tonight is that three of us are going to go to Murfreesboro this weekend for the annual Tennessee Municipal League convention. Murfreesboro, as you know, is one of the fastest growing cities. It is the fastest growing city in Tennessee, one of the fastest in the nation. Probably 20 years ago, I remember when it was about 35,000. They're over 100,000 today. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope we will also learn some new tricks while we're there. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that I've returned from Dodge City, Kansas. You've probably heard "Get the heck out of Dodge," or their new slogan for their town now is "Get the heck back into Dodge." It's a city that's progressing very well. I was there representing the town of Farragut on the Human Development Committee, which is one of the 7 committees of the National League of Cities. What we discussed were ways to improve the Social Security in our country. We also talked about the Workforce Investment Act. We will be meeting again in Durham, North Carolina in the fall. This committee meets twice a year. So I just want to thank the town for giving me the opportunity to serve on this committee, and I will be bringing back more information. I have these little brochures, though, which I thought were really neat. I just talked to Sue, and we do have our annual budget report, and we do have a thing that represents our town from the museum, but I thought this was really clever how they have just about everything about the town in this one little folder. Thank you.
Next item is Citizens Forum. Do we have anybody?
Yes, sir.
This is the opportunity to come and speak on whatever issue you're interested in, whether it's on the agenda or not. If so, go to the podium, tell us your name and address and what your concern is. If not, if there is no one, then we'll move on. Next item is approval of minutes from May 26, 2011. Two of us cannot vote on this because we weren't here, so it's up to the other 3 of you.
For approval of the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That was 3, right? Okay. Minutes are approved. Next item is ordinances. First reading on ordinance 11-04, ordinance to rezone a portion of parcel 59.06, tax map 152, located on the north side of Turkey Creek Road, across from Anchor Park, 3.55 acres from R1, which is rural single-family residential district R-4, attached single-family residential district. This is the Smith Farm Residential Partners applying.
The land located immediately to the east of this property is already zoned R4, and it came before the Planning Commission several years ago to develop an attached single-family development called Anchor Park, the Villas at Anchor Park. And at the time, they did not own the land that is before you tonight for rezoning. And given the width of the property that they had, they were going to be constructing a street that was just single-loaded, meaning that the structures would just be located on one side of the road. Since that point in time, they have acquired the land that is up before you tonight for rezoning, and they have incorporated into their overall design of the villas at Anchor Park. The Planning Commission approved the concept plan last month. They will be having the preliminary plat for Phase 1 before them this month. This rezoning provides for a road to be constructed that's double-loaded, meaning that there will be condos located on both sides of the road rather than just on one side of the road, which is a much more efficient use of that type of infrastructure. The R4 zoning district states that when there is a land that's being considered for rezoning, that it should be free from severe natural environmental limitations and provide access to a street having a designated classification of local collector or grader, or a local street which is not interior to the subdivision. The street on which the development accesses must also meet the minimum design standards established in the Farragut subdivision regulations. This property actually meets those criteria because the land slopes to the north, going north slopes uphill, but it is not a severe environmental limitation for this type of development. In addition, as you all know, Turkey Creek Road was reconstructed about 15 years ago, so it does meet the minimum design standards established in our subdivision regulations. Anchor Park is located directly across the road from this development. So this is an ideal location for a higher density type development because of the access to recreation readily available. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Ordinance 1104 and the rezoning, and the staff also recommends approval of Ordinance 1104.
Any discussion?
How many units do they anticipate? Is it
Total of 99.
Questions? Does anybody have a motion?
second?
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that'll be back for second reading at the next meeting, right? Thank you. The next item is Ordinance 11-05, Ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code Title 9, Chapter 4, Sign Ordinance, Section 9-404, Definitions to change the definition of abandoned sign by increasing the time from 30 days to 90 days. Jeffrey Fields, applicant.
I included in your packet a copy of Mr. Fields' application so that you could, so that you could see that what is before you is different from what his original request was. This was discussed extensively at the Visual Resources Review Board, and I summarized those discussions in the memo to you all. The initial request was that a particular sign type, a cabinet type wall sign, would not have to be removed when a tenant left, and that it would be treated differently than all other types of signs. The Visual Resources Review Board felt that that was not equitable, and that there needed to be a better way that treated all the styles of signs the same, but also acknowledging that maybe 30 days is too quick in order to get signs down after businesses leave the premises, and also if there is going to be a reoccupancy and a frame can be reused, that would provide for more time to do that. With Mr. Fields' agreement, it was modified that the best way to accommodate would be to change the definition of abandoned sign by increasing the time from 30 days to 90 days. The Visual Resources Review Board unanimously recommended this change to accommodate Mr. Fields, and then the Planning Commission also recommended unanimously for this change and recommended approval of Ordinance 1105. Staff also recommends approval of Ordinance 1105.
Discussion of this?
I had a question, why 90? Was that, there's some rationale behind that versus 60 or 120 or?
I think it was basically a discussion of compromise as to what can be reasonable if you have a tenant that's coming into a space, and that if a space is going to be reoccupied, it can take a while to do building modifications and that type of thing. That it was felt that whenever you have a tenant change out, your modifications are generally fairly minor and it doesn't take that long, but it can take a while, and so it was felt that 90 days was a good compromise to meet that need.
Is there any downside to this that you can see? Does it weaken our sign ordinance in any way? Are there any other ramifications or unintended consequences?
Well, if a business has left and the sign was a non-compliant grandfathered sign, this would not affect it at all. And that was one of the concerns that the Visual Resources Review Board talked about extensively, is that we have been very successful in bringing non-compliant signs down, and so that we did not want to jeopardize that aspect of it. And so this is why they opted to define what an abandoned sign was, because if the business is no longer in play, in existence, and it's a non-compliant sign, a new business could not come in and use a non-compliant sign. But let's say if you have a tenant that is using the exact same tenant space as the previous tenant, then unless there is a sign ordinance change, they would be able to just change out the panel in there. And so that was why the compromise kind of evolved to the way it was because of the concerns with that.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Motion?
Move to approve ordinance 1105.
Second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is ordinance 11-07, fiscal year 2012 budget. This is the first reading.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the first reading of our ordinance to approve the FY 2012 budget for fiscal year starting July 1st and ending June 30th. We have been working on this, seems like tirelessly, since about January of this year, so it's about a 5 to 6 month process that we've been going through in order to prioritize the funding and what we want to try to get accomplished next year. And one of the first things that we did this year that may be a little different than in prior years is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen got together in planning sessions in both January and February of this year, and we had Citizens Summit as well. And through all of those processes, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen came up with a vision and a set of goals for the year ahead. The vision was a 15-year vision